Canada was just another layover in my life. At least, that's what I used to think. My name is Anna Petrova, and for 8 years I've been a flight attendant for a major Russian airline. My colleagues call me the Ice Queen. Why? Because I had traveled to 25 countries, but had never been moved by any of them. I'd never shed a tear over a beautiful landscape. The Eiffel Tower in Paris was just a steel structure. The Colosseum in Rome, just a pile of ancient stones. The Statue of Liberty in New York, just a copper monument. To me, every place on earth was the same. A workplace. My passport was a gallery of stamps from around the globe, but my heart had no room for any of them. I was proud of this cold detachment. In my mind, showing emotion while traveling was a sign of weakness. Anna, we're off to Canada this time. The land of polite people and maple syrup. Yekaterina, a new flight attendant, chirped with excitement. I flipped through the flight manual without looking up. Just a country between two oceans, I muttered. A one-night stopover, then we're gone. Yekaterina's eyes widened. Are you really a robot? It was a running joke among the crew that I was an android whose emotion chip had malfunctioned. I didn't find it funny. As we prepared for departure, the in-flight entertainment system was showing a Canadian film, a drama, about a family struggling through a harsh winter, set against a stunning mountain backdrop. The co-pilot sighed. Canadian films are incredible, aren't they? This one won an award at TIFF. A film is a film, I shrugged. For us, it's just an airport and a hotel. As the plane ascended from Moscow, the passenger next to me was engrossed in a Canadian travel guide. I scoffed internally. Such naive tourists. Every country is more or less the same. Anna, have you really never been impressed by any country? Irina, the head attendant, asked as she handed me a coffee. Airports are all identical. Runways, duty-free shops, immigration counters. For 8 years, that's all I've seen. My reply was always as cold and formal as a pre-flight safety announcement. I took my seat by the emergency exit, gazing out the window. For the 14-hour journey, I buried myself in a classic Russian novel. The characters in books were more honest and understandable than people in the real world. Suddenly, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. We are beginning our descent into Toronto Pearson International Airport. Local time is 2 p.m. I sighed and closed my book. Another checklist began. Check into the hotel, shower, sleep, check out, fly again. My life felt like a piece of luggage on an endless baggage carousel. The plane shuddered slightly as it touched down. Canada, from the window, was just another sprawling city. After the last passenger had disembarked, we began to gather our luggage. Anna, I heard Toronto is safe at night. I want to go for a walk, Yekaterina said, her voice buzzing with excitement. Don't be ridiculous. We have an early flight tomorrow, I said, shaking my head. But in that instant, a strange curiosity pricked at a corner of my mind. What could possibly be special about Canada? I asked myself, annoyed that the question had even surfaced. Of course, I wouldn't admit it. The Ice Queen persona I had built for 8 years would crumble. Little did I know, as I stepped off that plane, that this place, this mere layover, was about to change my life completely. Canada would be the 26th stamp in my passport, and the first to ever claim a space in my heart. At that moment, I couldn't have imagined it in the slightest. The moment I stepped into Toronto Pearson Airport, my eyes widened. Was this an airport? The architecture was sleek and modern, with vast, open spaces and impressive art installations. The floors were polished to a mirror shine, the ceiling soared high above, and most importantly, it was teeming with people from every corner of the world. This is the airport for a quiet country? I mumbled to myself. Yekaterina was already taking photos with her phone. Anna, look, they have service robots. A silver robot was indeed directing tourists. It was a sight I couldn't imagine back in Moscow's airports. Though I pretended to be unimpressed, I was secretly amazed. On the way to immigration, the automated baggage system caught my eye. Suitcases moved and sorted themselves on belts with an almost silent efficiency. In Russia, most of this work was still done by hand. It's a little different here, I found myself saying aloud. When we reached the counter, the officer asked in English about our travel plans. "Departure tomorrow morning," I replied curtly. Then the officer looked at my passport, smiled, and said in clear Russian, "Dobro pozhalovat v Kanadu, Miss Petrova. Welcome to Canada." I was so startled I flinched, staring at him. How did he know my name? And speak Russian? The officer chuckled. "We receive the crew manifests for international flights in advance. Welcome to Canada." I was baffled. In all 25 countries I'd visited, I had never received such a personal welcome. It was usually just a curt "next," followed by a loud stamp. After clearing immigration, I stopped at a restroom. Cleanliness was a given, but by the sinks there were dispensers of free, locally made hand lotion. A cleaner was mopping the floor. A man in a business suit walking past nodded to her and said, "Thank you. Appreciate you keeping it so clean." I froze. In Russia, cleaning staff are treated like they're invisible. Why did this man even acknowledge her? Even more surprising, the cleaner beamed and replied, "Have a safe trip." The interaction was so natural it felt surreal, like a scene from a movie. While waiting for the hotel shuttle bus, people formed an orderly queue. No one was directing them. Everyone just naturally respected the line. In Russia, it would have been a chaotic scramble to get on board. "The people here are strange," I said to Yekaterina. "The Ice Queen is starting to thaw," she giggled. When we boarded the bus, the driver offered to help with our bags, and he too spoke a few words of Russian. "Spasibo, but we can manage," I refused out of habit. The driver just smiled warmly. "It's my job to help, miss." In that moment, I was truly confused. Why were the people in this country so kind? Was there some hidden motive? On the way to the hotel, the Toronto skyline unfolded outside the window. Gleaming skyscrapers, bright neon signs, and remarkably clean streets. Most importantly, the faces of the people on the streets looked relaxed and content. "It's just a layover," I told myself. But a small shift had already begun inside me. The heart of the Ice Queen was starting to crack. At the hotel, our room was spacious and immaculate, with a panoramic view of downtown Toronto. The city hummed with a unique energy, a vibrant rhythm completely different from the heavy, solemn beat of Moscow. In the room, there was a selection of Canadian herbal teas. I brewed a cup. The aroma was fragrant, the taste subtly sweet. In Russian hotels, you were lucky to get a packet of instant coffee. This small detail surprised me. Yekaterina, having already changed, was eager to go out. "I really want to see the city, the Eaton Center. They say it's a shopper's paradise, and there are so many food stalls." "We'll be back in time for our flight, I promise," she pleaded, her eyes sparkling. Normally, I would have flatly refused. But for some reason this time I heard myself say, "Should we go together?" The words surprised even me. In 8 years, I had never once explored a city where I was working. The hotel room was my entire world. Yekaterina clapped her hands in astonishment. "Really? The Ice Queen is melting!" An hour later, we were in the hotel lobby. Soft music played, and a faint scent of fresh flowers hung in the air. At the concierge desk, a young woman with a warm, genuine smile greeted us. "Where are you ladies off to today?" she asked. "The Eaton Center," Yekaterina replied. The woman pulled out a colorful city map and, noticing our accents, began explaining the route on the TTC subway in surprisingly clear Russian. "You'll take this line, get off at this station, and it's a short walk. And if you use this Presto card, you can get a discount. Don't forget to tap on the green machine." She even drew a simple map for us, marking points of interest along the way. "Thank you so much," I said, a blush creeping up my neck. In Russia, Few hotel staff would go to such lengths to help a guest. The kindness of the people here made me suspicious. Were they just hoping for a big tip? But her sincere eyes made my doubts waver. The subway was unbelievably clean. Not a single piece of trash on the floor. People were quiet, looking at their phones or reading books. No one was shouting. When we arrived at the shopping district, the streets were alive with energy. Cosmetic shops, clothing boutiques, and restaurants lined the sidewalks. Yekaterina let out a constant stream of wows, darting from one store to the next. I was just browsing, but every employee smiled and offered a friendly greeting, which felt strange. In Russia, you were often met with suspicious glares when entering a store. Inside a large cosmetics shop, an employee approached us. "Where are you visiting from?" she asked. "Russia," I replied. Instantly, she switched to broken but enthusiastic Russian, "Privet." "Welcome." She even recommended Canadian-made products popular with Russian tourists. How did she know these things? It was amazing. Walking down the street, we started to feel hungry. As we looked for a place to eat, I saw a janitor emptying a trash can on the sidewalk. Suddenly, a young university student walking by paused and nodded at her. "Thank you for what you do," he said with a small smile. I stood frozen on the spot. I had seen something similar at the airport. This wasn't a coincidence. The janitor, looking genuinely pleased, smiled back. "Finished with classes for the day?" "Heading to a study group," the student replied. The exchange left me completely bewildered. It was a scene that would never, ever happen in Russia. There, a janitor is just a janitor. But here, people greeted them, even made small talk. "Yekaterina, did you see that? Isn't it strange?" I asked. "What?" Yekaterina tilted her head, her hands full of shopping bags. That student, talking to the janitor. "You would never see that back home." Yekaterina thought for a moment. "You're right. At home, we treat cleaners like they're invisible." At that moment, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. A simple greeting witnessed in this foreign land had shaken me so deeply. It wasn't just common courtesy, it was a fundamental difference in how human beings treated one another. As we sat down in a restaurant, that image was still etched in my mind. Thank you. Such simple words, but they carried a weight of respect and gratitude. Until now, in my 25 countries, I had only paid attention to buildings, food, and landscapes. It never occurred to me to observe the most important thing: how people treated each other. The heart of the Ice Queen began to crack even further. Though I didn't know it yet, Canada was destined to be not just a layover in my life, but a turning point. While looking at the menu, I couldn't shake the scene from my mind. Yekaterina pointed at the menu. "Poutine is famous here. Should we try it?" My mind was a mess, but I nodded. A waiter came to take our order. When he realized we were visitors, he kindly explained the menu in simple English. In Russia, if you don't speak Russian, you're often ignored. When the food arrived, the waiter began to demonstrate how to eat it. This is classic poutine. You have to get a bit of the cheese curd, gravy, and fries all in one bite, like this. He showed us with a smile. I hesitantly followed his lead. The explosion of savory, cheesy flavor in my mouth was a pleasant surprise. The waiter stayed by our table, explaining more about Canadian food culture. "Is this level of service normal here?" I asked. "Of course," he replied. "Our guests are like family." The answer was so natural it stunned me even more. When it was time to pay, I handed him my credit card. The waiter said, "You're visitors, right? I'll give you a 10% discount. Why?" I asked, confused. "Because we're thankful you came to visit our country." The employee's sincere reply left me speechless. Stepping back onto the street, it suddenly started to rain. We didn't have an umbrella and were stuck. Just then, the owner of the cafe next door ran out, holding an umbrella. "Here, take this." "It's the cafes. You can just leave it somewhere when you're done." I looked at him in disbelief. "Really? No deposit? The owner shook his head, smiling. This is Canada. Don't worry about it. As we walked under the shared umbrella, I said to Yekaterina, the people in this country are really strange. Why are they so kind? I know, it's almost suspicious, she agreed. On our way, we saw an elderly man struggling to carry heavy grocery bags up a flight of stairs. Incredibly, a group of teenagers nearby immediately ran over to help without being asked. Look, there it is again, Yekaterina pointed. In Russia, they would have just walked by. I watched the scene in silence, my heart aching again. Why did these small acts of consideration between strangers move me to the point of tears? On the subway back to the hotel, a pregnant woman got on. Instantly, several people stood up to offer her a seat. In Russia, most would pretend not to see. Back at the hotel, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what made this country so different. It wasn't just kindness, it was the way people showed mutual respect. Beside me, Yekaterina said, we have to fly out early tomorrow, but I feel sad. I want to come back. I didn't answer, but I felt the exact same way. I had boarded a plane over 1,000 times, but this was the first time I felt a genuine reluctance to leave a place. That night, I dreamt I was on the Moscow metro. The people around me were stone-faced, lost in their own worlds. But next to me sat a Canadian man. He smiled and said, "Thank you." When I opened my eyes, I felt something wet on my face. I touched my cheek. It was a tear, a warm tear, streaming down the face of the Ice Queen. This must be the magic that this country called Canada had given me. The next morning, looking out the window, Toronto was sparkling in the sunlight. It was our departure day, but my body felt strangely heavy. I had been to 25 countries, but this was the first time I didn't want to leave. No, it wasn't just that I didn't want to leave. I was questioning where this feeling was even coming from. I had always thought of myself as emotionless, a machine built for work. But yesterday's experiences had caused a subtle shift deep within me. "Anna, are you awake? Let's get breakfast," Yekaterina called cheerfully. In the elevator down to the hotel restaurant, yesterday's images replayed in my head. The student greeting the janitor, the teenagers helping the old man, the shop owner lending us an umbrella. What was it about this place? The breakfast buffet offered both Canadian and international options. The Canadian section had a special aroma. There were dishes I didn't recognize, fluffy pancakes with maple syrup, and savory pea meal bacon. Yekaterina bravely opted for a full Canadian breakfast, but I stuck to my usual toast and eggs. Conservatism was my nature. I never took risks, never tried new things. "Anna, try these pancakes." "They're so light and fluffy," Yekaterina urged. I looked at the golden brown discs drizzled with amber syrup. Reluctantly, I took a small bite. It was unexpectedly delicious. Fluffy, warm, with a sweet, woody flavor completely different from anything in Russia. I ended up eating a whole stack. It was the first time in 8 years I had tried a local dish at a hotel breakfast. After breakfast, we went to the lobby to check out. Suddenly, a staff member informed us, "Ma'am, your flight back to Russia has been delayed by 4 hours." My heart leaped. Not with anxiety over the delay, but with an unexpected thrill. 4 hours. I could get to know this city a little more. "Don't worry," the staff member continued. "We offer a complimentary city tour for our guests in this situation. A 4-hour tour of Toronto, how does that sound?" "Really?" Yekaterina's eyes lit up. "Yes. We don't want our guests to be bored. We have a special guide who will take you to some of the most iconic places in the city," he replied with a smile, handing us a beautiful brochure. In Russia, they would have just said, "Our apologies, please wait." A guest's inconvenience was never their responsibility, but here they offered a free tour. It was astonishing. 30 minutes later, we were sitting in a comfortable minibus for our tour of downtown Toronto. The vehicle was new, the seats were plush, and there were bottles of cold water and wet wipes for us. Our guide was a middle-aged man in a clean uniform with a friendly smile. He introduced the history and culture of Toronto in perfect, unaccented Russian. "Your Russian is excellent," I commented. "I took classes specifically for our Russian guests," he explained. "I'm a big fan of your country's hockey and music. Ovechkin and Tchaikovsky are my heroes." His answer surprised me yet again. The people of this nation were so open and curious about the outside world. During the tour, we stopped at a small, famous bakery in the Distillery District. It wasn't large, but it was cozy and full of Canadian charm, with rustic wooden tables and local art on the walls. "Here, we'll try an iconic Canadian treat, the butter tart," our guide announced. The owner is a third-generation baker who has been running this shop for 50 years. A kind-looking elderly woman brought out 2 tarts, the pastry golden and flaky, the filling gooey and rich. Yekaterina didn't hesitate. "Wow, it's so sweet and buttery," she exclaimed, her eyes wide. I took a careful bite. The flaky crust gave way to a warm, sweet, and slightly runny filling. It was a rich, comforting taste, completely different from the dense pastries of Russia. It was so good I couldn't resist another bite. The owner, seeing our delight, immediately brought us some hot apple cider. First-time butter tart eaters can find them very rich. "This cider helps cut the sweetness," she explained. Incredibly, she then brought out 2 more tarts. "These have raisins, a different style. I wanted you to try them both." She also gave us a small bag of maple cookies to take with us, for free. "Why are you doing all this?" I asked, bewildered. "I just want you to love our Canadian baking," she said with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "To go home with a good memory of Toronto, that's all that matters to me." In that moment, a warmth spread through my chest. This wasn't just ordinary kindness. It was a genuine, heartfelt desire to share joy. I had never met anyone who tried so hard just to make someone else like their food. In Russia, the focus was almost always on the profit. Back on the bus, I stared out the window, lost in thought. Where did this Canadian warmth come from? Why were they so kind to strangers? "Canada has a long history of immigration and hardship," our guide explained, as if reading my mind. People from all over the world came here and had to rely on each other to survive in a new, often harsh land. That tradition of helping your neighbor, of building a community, has been passed down through generations. When I heard that, my eyes welled up. A shared history, passed down into individual actions. Because they had known struggle, they had learned to be gentle. On the way back to the hotel, Yekaterina whispered, "Anna, this is the kind of place I've always dreamed of. A place where people care about each other." I nodded silently. The icy shell around my heart was melting away. The warmth of Canada was changing me. On the way to the airport, we decided to take one last walk through a neighborhood near the hotel. There was still time before our flight. The streets were clean, bustling with people. "Look, a farmer's market," Yekaterina pointed. As we stepped inside, we were greeted by a vibrant atmosphere and the smells of fresh produce, baked goods, and flowers. Markets in Russia were often dark and smelled musty, but this one was bright and orderly. "Come, have a taste," vendors called out with friendly smiles. Yekaterina stopped at a stall selling pea-meal bacon sandwiches. "This looks nothing like what we've had before. Let's try one." "It'll be too heavy," I protested, but she had already ordered 2. A cheerful man began to assemble the sandwiches on fresh buns, piling on the thick slices of Canadian bacon. "First time trying this?" he asked. He handed me my sandwich. I took a tentative bite. Wow. The smoky, savory flavor filled my mouth. The bacon was tender, the bun soft. Yekaterina had the same reaction. "This is delicious," we said in unison. The vendor, seeing our expressions, beamed with pride. "Glad you like it. Here, let me add some maple mustard. It makes it even better." But then something even more surprising happened. He started making another sandwich. This one I'm making with some aged cheddar. It's my special version. I want you to taste the real Toronto. We thought he would charge us extra, but he didn't. It was just a simple, kind gesture. I had never encountered such genuine thoughtfulness. It's okay, we can't eat another one, I said, embarrassed. Nonsense. My parents were immigrants. I know how hard it can be to get used to new food. I understand, the man said. His words touched me deeply. The new sandwich was incredible. He had even added a free pickle on the side. Enjoy, and come back to visit our country again, he said with a happy grin. When we went to pay, the price was surprisingly low. In Russia, they would have charged a premium for tourists. This is too cheap. Please take more, I insisted. But the man just waved his hand. No, just come back again next time. That's better. Walking out of the market, Yekaterina said, people here value kindness more than money. I nodded. Yes, this country values people more than things. Caring for each other is the foundation of everything they do. A look at my watch told us it was time to head to the airport. In the taxi, the view of Toronto was etched into my memory. The tall buildings, the clean streets, and most importantly, the warm smiles on people's faces. The taxi was spotless. The driver, a man in his 50s with kind eyes behind his glasses, had a small Canadian flag hanging from his rearview mirror. Where are you from? He asked in simple English. Russia, I replied. He immediately listed several Russian cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Vladivostok, and then named a few Russian hockey players. Seeing my surprise, he smiled. We are one world. We are all friends. I've seen Russian movies. I love your culture. His words touched me deeply. In Russia, taxi drivers were usually silent and grim. This man was talking to us like old friends. The heart of the Ice Queen had completely melted. On the way to Pearson Airport, the Canada I saw through the taxi window was astonishing. The clean roads, the orderly traffic, and above all, the bright expressions on people's faces. In Russia, most people wore a constant frown. There were many cars on the road, but everyone followed the rules. When the light turned red, everyone waited patiently. No one honked their horn. It was a scene unimaginable in Moscow. What is the pace of life like for Canadians? I asked the driver. Not too fast, not too slow. Just right, he answered. We believe you get further by being steady than by rushing. His words were philosophical. We still have a little time. Can we see a real neighborhood? Yekaterina suggested. Hearing this, the driver said, I'll take you where the locals live. Not a tourist spot, but the real Canada. We got out of the taxi and began to walk down a street near the airport. A cool breeze blew in, and the sky was a brilliant blue, so different from the often gray skies of Russia. It was a small community, a mix of older brick houses and modern apartments. The streets were narrow but spotless, lined with lush green trees whose names I didn't know. As we were walking, we saw an elderly woman pushing a small cart filled with fruits and vegetables, a mobile fruit stand. The cart looked heavy. Suddenly, as she rounded a corner, a wheel caught on the curb, and the cart tipped, sending apples and oranges rolling across the sidewalk. In Russia, most people would have just walked past. Honestly, that was my first instinct too. For 8 years, I had grown accustomed to ignoring the troubles of strangers. But then, something incredible happened. 2 high school students and a man in a business suit who were nearby immediately rushed to help. They started picking up the scattered fruit, carefully placing it back in the cart. Then they worked together to heave the cart back onto the sidewalk. No one hesitated. No one worried about getting their clothes dirty. Are you all right, ma'am? They asked with concern. The old woman looked a little shaken, but quickly managed a grateful smile, nodding and thanking them over and over, her eyes misty. Even more incredibly, after helping, they each bought some fruit from her before leaving, paying more than the asking price. Take care of yourself, one of the students said as he walked away. Look, Anna, Yekaterina said, her voice trembling with emotion. They didn't just help. They thought about her business, her dignity. I watched, my own eyes burning with tears. New York, Paris, Moscow, I had never seen a scene like this in any major city. This wasn't just simple kindness. It was a way of life, a culture of caring that treated strangers like family. We walked over and bought some fruit ourselves. The mango was sweet, the berries fragrant. The old woman, smiling happily, gave us extra. Your visitors? Eat up. Canadian fruit is some of the best in the world. Good for you, she said. Her accent was local, but her eyes were warm. Her wrinkles were deep, but her smile was gentle. In that moment, I realized that this country's advancement wasn't just in its technology, but in the hearts of its people. A heart that cares for others, a heart that is ready to give to a stranger. That was Canada's true progress. As we ate our fruit and walked on, we saw an elderly man suddenly stumble and collapse onto a bench, looking unwell. Immediately, people around him rushed to help. A young mother with a child quickly called for an ambulance. Others helped the man into a more comfortable position in the shade. Someone ran to a nearby shop to get a bottle of cold water for him. Even a cyclist passing by stopped to ask if help was needed. Sir, the ambulance is on its way. Don't worry, everyone reassured him. Anna, these people, they're like one big family, the way they look out for each other, Yekaterina said with admiration. I watched in silence, and it dawned on me. For 8 years, I had only seen buildings, food, and landscapes. I had never seen the true face of a country. The people and the bonds between them, that was the most beautiful scenery a place could offer. On the way back to the airport, we were both quiet, lost in our own thoughts. Something inside me was changing. The wall of ice that had protected my heart for 8 years was crumbling, piece by piece. The cold heart of the Ice Queen was being gently warmed. Anna, when we go back home, what will you miss the most? Yekaterina asked. I thought for a moment and then replied, the people, their smiles, their kindness, and the way they treat each other. When we reached the airport, I felt a strange pang, as if I were leaving home. It was funny. I had only stayed 1 night, but this country already felt more like home than anywhere I'd ever been. On the way to the departure hall, I looked back at Canada one last time and thought, I have to come back. This time, not for a layover, but for a real visit. Before heading to my flight, I bought a small souvenir from the duty-free shop, a maple leaf keychain. It wasn't just a trinket. It was proof of the country that had sparked a change in my heart. Inside the Ice Queen, a small, warm flame had begun to flicker, a flame ignited by a country called Canada. Standing at the immigration gate for departure, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. I had only been here for a night, but I'd never felt so reluctant to leave. It was a first. Yekaterina felt it too. She looked around and sighed. It's crazy. I've only been here a day and I'm already in love with this country, she smiled. It's not crazy, I replied sincerely. This place is special. After passing through security, we still had time before boarding. We browsed the shops selling Canadian cosmetics, local crafts, and snacks. Normally, I would have walked right past, but now, everything seemed meaningful. Look, Anna, Yekaterina exclaimed, pointing. Isn't that the lady from the bakery yesterday? I looked over, surprised. It really was the baker from the market. She was pulling a suitcase, accompanied by a young man. Hello, we said, approaching her. The woman looked at us, puzzled for a moment, and then her face broke into a wide, delighted smile. Oh, the 2 young ladies who loved my butter tarts. What a small world! We're flying back home today. What about you? I asked. I'm sending my son off. He's going to Russia for a music exchange program. Her answer astonished us even more. Really? Which city? Yekaterina asked excitedly. Moscow. He's studying classical piano. The young man, who was her son, smiled shyly. A sudden warmth filled my heart. The kind person who had shown us such generosity yesterday was now connected to us in this unexpected way. "I'm based in Moscow," I said, pulling out my business card. "If he ever needs any help, please have him contact me." The woman took the card, her eyes glistening. "Oh, thank you, dear. Thank you so much. It's his first time in Russia. I've been so worried." She then reached into her bag and pulled out a small, hand-carved wooden beaver. "Please, take this little souvenir from Canada for good luck." In that moment, tears pricked my eyes. A stranger I had met only yesterday was giving me a gift like an old friend. It was a first for me. "Thank you so much." "I have a gift for your son, too," I said, taking out a bar of high-quality Russian chocolate from my bag. "This is the most famous chocolate in Russia. We exchanged gifts from our respective countries." It wasn't just an exchange of objects, it was an exchange of kindness. An announcement echoed through the airport. The flight to Moscow was now boarding. We said our goodbyes to the woman with a sense of heartfelt connection. "We'll see you in Moscow." On the way to the gate, I stopped by the restroom. And there, I saw him again, the janitor I had seen on my first day at the airport. He was still in his uniform, his hair now gray, but he moved with a spry energy. Incredibly, he recognized me. "Hey, it's the flight attendant from Russia. Heading home?" I didn't remember his face clearly, but he remembered mine. A wave of warmth washed over me. In this massive, busy airport, how could he possibly remember a foreign visitor he had seen only once? "Yes, I'm leaving today." "How did you remember me?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "I remember all the international flight crews," he said with a proud smile. "I always wonder what you think of our city. I hope you're taking good memories back with you." He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pin shaped like a maple leaf. "A little souvenir from Canada. It's not much, but it's from me." This time, I couldn't hold back the tears. They streamed down my face like broken pearls. I had been to airports all over the world, but this was the first time a cleaning staff member had not only remembered me as a human being, but had also given me a gift. In Russia, cleaners were at the bottom of the social ladder, invisible. But this man radiated dignity and warmth. "Thank you so much. I will never forget you," I said, my voice choked with emotion. Seeing me cry, the man gently patted my shoulder. "Don't cry, miss. Canada welcomes you. Just remember the good things, and remember that there are still good people in the world." He took my hand. "Come back again. Canada will always welcome you." His hand was rough, but incredibly warm, like a father's hand. I took the pin with trembling hands and walked to the gate. Yekaterina was shocked to see my tears. "Anna, this is the first time I've ever seen you cry." "It's the first time I've ever seen myself cry, too," I replied, smiling through the tears. For years, I thought I was incapable of crying. I thought my heart had turned to ice, but the warmth of Canada had given me back my humanity. As I boarded the plane, I took one last look at Canada through the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold. This was no longer just a layover. It was the turning point of my life, a destination for my heart. Seated on the plane, I looked at the little pin and thought, Canada possessed something far more advanced than technology, a spirit of respect and care for one another. That was true progress. As the plane took off, a new resolution formed in my mind. The Ice Queen was no more. The warmth of Canada had changed me completely. Now, I was ready to return to Moscow and share that warmth. But I had no idea that my story in Canada was about to create a massive ripple effect online. Back in Moscow, I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I shared my experience in Canada on social media. "I used to think Canada was just a layover," I wrote, "but 2 days there changed my entire perspective on life. The people taught me what true warmth is." I wrote about the airport janitor, the baker at the market, and the countless small acts of kindness from strangers. I described their smiles, their patience, and the care they showed to a foreigner. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments poured in from people all over the world, sharing their own experiences. I felt that same warmth in Canada. Canadians are different. Their hearts are so beautiful. That country restored my faith in humanity. When I was lost in Toronto, a stranger walked me 10 minutes out of his way to get me to my destination. A week later, my airline offered me a special position. They were opening a permanent, dedicated route to Canada and wanted me to be the head flight attendant responsible for cultural exchange between Russia and Canada. I accepted without a second thought. I wanted to set foot on that warm land again. 2 months later, I was standing in Toronto Pearson International Airport once more. This time, not for a layover, but to start my dream job. As I walked past the same restroom, I saw the same janitor. He saw me and his face lit up. "You're back. I knew you'd be back. I work the Canada route now." "I'll be here often," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "That's wonderful," he said. "Welcome home. Home." The word felt so right. Canada had truly become my second home. 6 months later, I applied for permanent residency in Canada. I wanted to learn English, to understand the culture of this country on a deeper level. A year later, I opened a small Russian cultural center in Toronto. I wanted to introduce my country to Canadians, just as they had shown me their warmth. The baker from the market visited often. "My son is doing so well in Moscow, thanks to you." "He's adjusted so well," she would always say. The airport janitor, after he retired, would often stop by my center. "You made our city famous around the world," he'd say with pride. "No," I'd reply. "Canada changed me. It wasn't me who made Canada famous." After living in Canada for a year, I came to understand its special nature on a profound level. Every morning when I went to the local market for groceries, people would greet me, "Anna's here," as if I were a part of the community. The vegetable vendor would save the freshest produce for me. The fruit seller would always let me taste for sweetness first. The fishmonger taught me how to pick the freshest fish. I had never felt this sense of belonging in Russia. In Moscow, neighbors are strangers. But in Canada, I felt the warmth of a true community. Learning English was a joy. My teacher was a kind, retired woman in her 60s named Sarah. She would patiently correct my pronunciation and grammar. "Anna, you're doing so well. English is hard, but you're getting better every day." Her encouragement meant the world to me. Sometimes I would go hiking with my Canadian friends in Algonquin Park or near the Rockies. Canada's nature was breathtaking, but what was even more beautiful were the moments shared with friends. My best friend Chloe was a cheerful and kind nurse. She always looked out for me, the foreigner. "Anna, you've changed so much," Chloe said one day. "When you first came, you were so cold and quiet. Now you're so warm and you even make jokes." I smiled. Canada changed me. The people here taught me how to live with my heart. During the Canada Day celebrations, Chloe's family invited me to their barbecue. Even though I was a foreigner, they treated me like one of their own. We watched the fireworks together, the atmosphere filled with warmth and happiness. One day, there was an emergency on the subway. An elderly man fainted and collapsed. People around him rushed to help instantly. Some called an ambulance, others administered first aid, while some kept the crowd back. I also helped, using my improving English to comfort the man's wife. "Ma'am, don't worry, the paramedics will be here soon." The woman squeezed my hand. "Thank you, dear. Your English is very good." In that moment, I knew I was no longer a foreigner. I was a part of this society, able to contribute and make a difference. 3 years later. Today, I am standing at Toronto Pearson International Airport, not to leave, but to welcome a special guest. Yekaterina is moving to Canada. She was hired by a Canadian airline and is starting a new life in Toronto. After hearing my story, she applied for a job here immediately. When I see her walking out of the arrivals hall, I think of myself 3 years ago, the cold, skeptical ice queen. I can see the same anxiety in her eyes, but also a spark of hope. Anna! She runs and hugs me. You look so different, so alive and warm. Am I? I smile, my heart filled with gratitude. Your eyes used to be as cold as a frozen lake. Now they're as warm as autumn sunshine. We take the train into Toronto. Yekaterina stares out the window with the same curiosity I had 3 years ago. But the difference is, now I can be her guide. So this is the place that changed you? It's not just the place, I reply, looking at the familiar cityscape. It's the people. Canada taught me what true human warmth is, and you're about to experience it. When we get to Toronto, I take her to that same market. It's become a ritual for me. Every Russian friend who visits, I bring them here. The man who sold us the pea-meal bacon sandwiches sees us and beams. He's older now, but just as energetic. Anna, you brought a new friend, he says, then tries his best English. Welcome to Canada. She's Russian, like me. She just moved here for work, I explain, my English now fluent. The man immediately starts making his special sandwich for Yekaterina with a little less mustard and extra cheese. For a first-timer, you have to ease into it. Once she's used to it, she can try the original. He winks. Seeing the look of astonishment on Yekaterina's face, I remember my own shock that first time. The feeling of being so thoroughly cared for by a complete stranger is unforgettable. You're going to love it here, I tell her, my eyes full of confidence. That night, in my small apartment, Yekaterina asks, do you ever regret leaving Russia? I think for a moment, not for a second. I found my true self here. In Russia, I was a cold machine. In Canada, I learned how to be human. Is the Ice Queen really gone? She's gone. The warmth of this country melted all the ice. Now, I'm just Anna, a normal person who can laugh, cry, and love. I pick up the maple leaf pin the janitor gave me and the wooden beaver from the baker. For 3 years, they have been with me. They are not just souvenirs, they are symbols of my return to humanity. Every time I see them, I remember the warmth that Canada taught me. Yekaterina looks at me intently. I want to change like you. In Russia, I feel myself turning into an ice queen, too. You will, I say firmly, taking her hand. Canada has a magic that makes people better. The people here will melt the walls of ice around your heart with their warmth. The next morning, we go to the observation deck of the CN Tower. Looking down at the entire city, bathed in sunlight, everything sparkles. This city is full of stories, I say, pointing to the streets below. Every corner holds a warm memory. Every person has a story of kindness. Tell me your most precious memory, Yekaterina asks. I think of the janitor I met on my first day. His simple thank you changed the course of my life forever. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can have the biggest impact, I say. One word, one smile, a small gesture of care can change someone's life. Now, I say thank you to every service worker I meet. Not just them, but everyone who serves society, the cleaners, police officers, nurses, teachers, bus drivers. I have learned to see the value in everyone. Over the past 3 years, I've learned the Canadian philosophy. Treat everyone as an important individual. Care for those around you with your heart. Show great love in small things. And believe that people are fundamentally good. My friends back in Russia say I've changed a lot. You're so much warmer, so much more charming, they say. Your smile seems real now. I hope I can bring some of this warmth back to Russia, but I know that change takes time and dedication. It took Canada 3 years to change me. Perhaps I will spend the rest of my life helping more people feel this warmth. Every time a Russian friend comes to Canada, I take them to that market to meet my friend, the sandwich maker. He always says the same thing. Canada welcomes you. We are all family. And he makes them the best food he can, just as he would for his own children. This is Canada, not because of its advanced technology or beautiful scenery, but because the hearts of its people are beautiful. because the people here believe in the power of love and goodness. Standing on the observation deck, I say to Yekaterina, welcome to the place that will change your life. Get ready to be embraced by warmth. A gentle breeze blows. Toronto sparkles below our feet. Just as that janitor said 3 years ago, come back again. I did come back. And I'm not just back, I am here. This is my home, my roots, my present, and my future. The story of the Ice Queen is over. But the story of Anna, a daughter of Canada, has just begun.